So obviously, the big headline for this episode is that Maria Hill is dead. She's dead. Did you get to experience that in episode, or was it ruined for you on social media? I suspect for a number of you, it was. And that's what I'm talking about when I say the 3 a.m. drop time is a problem. Now, the first time I saw that, when I watched the episode for the first time, what struck me was that Maria Hill never really got to do anything in the MCU. I was like, wow, what a waste of a character. And then I wondered how Colby Smulders felt about it. And she had to do all the press for this. And she's like, I'm not even in this frickin' show, darn it. So that's what I thought the first time I saw the episode. And I'm curious what your initial reaction was. I also wish they had gone for more of a jugular kill, right? I mean, a kill, well, we'll talk about Everett Ross. But, I feel like if you're going to do that, like in the comic, it was Elektra that you found out who had been replaced. So that was like the big reveal of the start of the story. And I don't really think they had that oomph in the MCU version because they can't afford it. You'll see that's a bit of a theme in this breakdown of pointing out things that they should do but can't afford to. But the second time I watched the episode to do my notes for this breakdown, I realized that she got fridged. Now, if you don't know what fridged means, I got you. So it's a term from comic books. It started out when a Green Lantern's girlfriend was stuffed in a fridge, and that's why it's called fridging. But what it means is that a character, usually female, is killed off to torture, get revenge against, but then also give that character development and the emotional reaction that they have to the death and to avenging the death. But it's always a male character that gets that benefit. So it's sacrificing a female character for the benefit of a male character. And it came at a time when female characters didn't get a lot of great stories. So it's like that was their only purpose. So, but that's Maria Hill to a T in 2023. So that's unfortunate. But Fury really has lost a few steps post-blip. There's no denying it. Although, to be fair, his whole team seems off their game. They're all doing a bad job. When you're dealing with shapeshifters, how did it not worry anybody that one of them wouldn't be impersonated, especially after what happens with Ross at the beginning of the episode? Although, also to be fair, it didn't occur to me. I was surprised when that turned out to be Gravik impersonating Fury and he shoots Hill, because there had been so little shapeshifting done to that point. You'd think they would have impersonated one of them earlier. So it was pulled off, I think, well in like the real time of the episode. But when you think about it, you're like, how could you guys have been so stupid? Methinks that some regular humans have survived too many Avengers missions and might think themselves invulnerable even post-blip. But besides that, clearly, something is holding Fury back when it comes to Gravik. There's some tie between them, I think, because in the square, in the end sequence, Fury wasn't moving aggressively enough to take Gravik out. There was something there. So that's interesting. So Maria Hill is dead. What about Everett Ross? Is he in cold storage in New Skrullos? What a stupid name. But is he in storage in New Skrullos? And when was he swapped out with a Skrull? To some degree, it would have been cool if he had always been a Skrull, right? Because they've been, you couldn't really do that in the comic book because they hadn't been around for that long. But the way the MCU has set it up, they've been around since the 90s. Well, I guess that wouldn't work for Everett Ross. But there are some people who could have been, established a whole life as Skrulls posing as humans. But I think he must have been switched out after Black Panther Wakanda Forever, because you can see a distinct change in his behavior here. I believe, by the way, you can tell when someone is a Skrull, and I don't like this so much because I think it's too easy on this show, because they act out of character and are dismissive. I mean, fake Everett Ross couldn't have pretended to believe in Prescott's theories. He had to be like, you're crazy, Prescott. Can we shred all this? Maybe. Or why don't you give it all to me? I'd be like, you know enough to shut this down. Get out of there and preserve your cover. I think that's why he got tackled. Prescott was like, this guy's being a jerk. And Everett Ross is the sweetest government agent that ever was. Perhaps sometimes too sweet. But that was a pretty good kill shot for a Disney Plus show. I think they went as far as they could, and I respected that. By the way, at the end of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, didn't Okoye break him out of government custody? So is the real Everett Ross in Wakanda? That's interesting. But no matter what, no matter where he is, in New Skrullos, Wakanda, because he would be on the run, so nobody would know about it. I guess that would make him easy to swap out. But why would Maria Hill be working with him? Wouldn't Skrull Everett Ross be in a government prison somewhere? Wouldn't he be useless to the Skrulls? I mean, they're not going to let him off the hook for treason. That's what he was. That's what he did in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Rhodey says something about Hill and Fury being AWOL, but I believe that the discovery of Everett Ross being a Skrull is what makes them go AWOL. And I think at the opening scene, they're just doing government op. So Hill wouldn't be in the field with someone who should be a government prisoner without at least establishing that in the dialogue. So it's really sloppy writing for the MCU. And quite frankly, a mistake that the MCU would not have made pre-Endgame. This stuff was nailed down better back then. When I interviewed the director of Secret Invasion, he said that one of the first things that Marvel told him when he came on board the project was not to read the comics. And clearly, this isn't a story about Skrulls invading the Earth and trying to take over the Avengers, the different governments, etc. The MCU clearly can't afford to tell that story, at least not on Disney Plus today, which we now know is hemorrhaging money. For instance, when you compare the opening reveal shots of both the comic and this show, what really sets our stories in motion, again, the reveal of Everett Ross being a Skrull and Elektra being a Skrull, even the fights are so different. Elektra went up against the Avengers, whereas here, there's a poorly lit, chase through generic Europe. No comparison between the two openings to set our stories in motion. Although the Elektra shot was referenced in the Captain Marvel movie, where I guess they could afford to do it. I will say for the opening sequence, though, you rarely see someone jumping roofs in Hollywood and not make it across. So I appreciated that bit of realism. I thought that was good. I liked that. So all this stuff about taking over the Earth and infiltrating different organizations is more in the background. The MCU Secret Invasion is really a story, like I said in my non-spoiler review, similar to the recent show The Old Man, about two older men in the spy game and the effect that has had on them over the years. Fury and Talos, so deep in the spy game, at least for Talos, we don't really totally know what's going on with Fury yet, but at least for Talos, he's dragged his whole family into it. Also, they've both adapted to each other's cultures, but as a result, I think also both feel lost. They've lost their sense of self. Talos demonstrates this with the plant from his homeworld. He brags about it. He's like, look, the plant has made a home here just as I have. And it's like, have you though? And I think Talos is trying to convince himself. Because clearly it's not going well for Talos, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we see that Fury essentially went native. He went full dances with wolves. The blip, and surely all the losses he suffered in Endgame, have shaken him to his core. And he left Earth for space, for the Saber space station, taking most of the Skrulls with him, or so he thought. Why are they not talking about the fact there are a bunch of Skrulls up there? That's really bothering me. However, while these two men might be very much alike, clearly when you get right down to it, and I find this interesting, they're not on the same side, which is made quite clear when they take care of that bomb maker who it's actually revealed to be a Skrull. The look on Talos' face when Fury shoots the Skrull and kills him anyway, when Talos told Fury he had this, that was one of the best moments in the episode. I was like, way to earn your paycheck, Ben Mendelsohn. That was beautiful. He broke my heart. Of course, Talos is trying to stop his fellow Skrulls from taking out humanity, but at the same time, I think Talos has always felt a responsibility for his fellow Skrulls, even though they no longer have given him that responsibility. They've taken it away from him. I think it's still there. And also, there are so few Skrulls left, and I think that means something to Talos. I think no matter what they've done, he wants to preserve his species. And to lose any of them, therefore, is devastating. And I also think that reminds him of what a mess Talos has let this whole situation become and how he no longer has any control. Even with Fury, no one will listen to him, even his so-called, supposed friend. And so I think that's so many layers of pain. You could see it all on Talos' face, too. It was great. What is going on with Talos? He's been kicked off the Skrull Council. His wife has been killed by Gravik's own forces, who have recruited their daughter, Gaia. She's defected. In Captain Marvel, Talos led the Skrulls. Now they don't even have one other Skrull working with them. I found that very odd, that there wasn't another Skrull in this group with Fury and Talos. Why didn't Fury bring some Skrulls down from the Saber space station? I mean, again, this seems very sloppy to me and like it was done more for budgetary reasons. I'm like, Talos, if not a single Skrull is still standing with you, what are you doing? So what's going on with the Skrulls? Now that they've said, see ya, Talos, it seems a new generation is taking over, led by Gravik and Gaia, Talos' daughter. They're the same generation, Gravik and Gaia, and she's one of his top people. Or at least she thinks she is. She doesn't seem to be super consulted on a lot of stuff. Although that's very, revolutionary terrorist leader, right? Like, let all your followers think they have some kind of skin in the game when in fact they're all just collateral damage. Again, there's some sort of Skrull council that we haven't seen yet, but they've also created strongholds. And since Skrulls, it's revealed, are immune to radiation, they're hiding out in abandoned nuclear plants throughout Russia. The main one called, as I said, New Skrullos, where they have Skrull produce. Where did they get the seeds? Where have the seeds been for so long? And how is that produce unchanged by Earth, but the Skrull plant is changed? Is Talos is lying to himself? Fury's like, it's the same goddamn plant, man. Don't tell him. That produce prop, though, by the way, was absolutely hilarious. They couldn't eat it. This is Hollywood. Come on, get a prop that you can actually eat. They would that actor just had to take like a bite behind the produce, and then they like cut away, and then they like quick put this liquid on your face so it looks like it's the juice, and you're like, I know what you're doing. Come on. All right, so I mean, you can paint an apple or do something with it. Come on. All right, so it just took me out of it. I thought it was ridiculous. Also, the fact that they're like never in their Skrull form. Why aren't the guards to New Skrullos in Skrull form? Why doesn't Gaia come up? I mean, she kind of explains that. She's like, the longer we stay in our human form, the less likely it is that anyone would be able to identify us, even other Skrulls. And I'm like, for most of you, your Skrull form looks just like your human form, only green. So I don't know who you're kidding. Just show me some Skrulls and I'll look for one that looks like who I saw, but in green. And I also don't understand why they've all chosen just one human shell. If they were true masters of disguise, wouldn't they have like a whole grab bag? Why would they be married to one human form? It makes no sense. Again, it's for the budget. All right, so every time a human is replaced by a Skrull, for some reason, they don't kill the original human, but again, put them in cold storage. For leverage or because this is a Disney Plus show? In the comics, readers were led to believe that the originals who had been replaced by Skrulls had been killed off, which made it all the more thrilling and scary. Yet at the same time, Marvel was not going to kill off Elektra and other characters because they could afford to do anything they wanted, so a lot of really great huge characters had been swapped out. So they did all come back at the end. It was revealed they had not been killed, but it was a surprise, and it was really a cool one. Skrulls being able to duplicate someone's mind as well, that's new. And I do not like it. I feel it's cheating when it comes to shape-shifting stories. Part of the fun is trying to trip the shapeshifter up with info by asking them questions. But here, if they can just copy the mind, that's no fun. But also, if they can replicate the mind, why did that bomb maker get caught in a lie about his wife, who it actually turns out is his ex-wife and doesn't live with him anymore? Did the Skrull bomb maker just assume that Fury and Talos hadn't done their homework? Again, sloppy on his part, sloppy on the writing on the show. I think there'd be more shape-shifting on a show like this. And spy work, more spy work. I feel it's very low on both the things that I was excited about. Especially since Fury has trained the Skrulls in espionage for decades to work for him. Something that you'd think someone maybe would have pointed out during this episode, being like, wow, it certainly would be great if they hadn't all been trained in our very own spycraft, huh, Fury? Thanks a lot. And again, why are none of them still on our side? Not one? And again, it shouldn't be just anger over Fury and Carol Danvers not finding them a new planet. But by the way, how are they even telling a Skrull story without Carol Danvers here? Why isn't the first call Fury makes after he's called to Carol saying, get your butt down here, the stuff's really hit the fan. The green poop has really hit the fan, man. But also, no appreciation for all the work the Skrulls have done for so long to help Earth. You know, while the Avengers get all the glory, they are truly Fury's forgotten children. I totally think that should have been explored, and it's ridiculous that it's not. Love the line, though, when they're talking about midlife crises, and Talos says, I'm not sure what I'm going to buy for my midlife crisis. What did you get for yours, Fury? And Fury looks at him and says, the Avengers. And I was like, that's awesome. I loved it. And it gave a lot of depth, I think, to creating the Avengers a little bit, too. I liked it. Some people might feel, why put that negativity on the Avengers? But who knows the reason that we do the things that we do, particularly when we look back. And I liked that. I appreciated Fury's realism, that he was willing to admit that. All right, some other tidbits from this episode. Dermot Mulroney is president, right? He's getting a lot of work these days. Scream 6, now the MCU. And he appears to be a Republican. These are a very strong pairing here on the wall, Nixon and Reagan. Not just because they're both Republicans, which makes me think maybe Mulroney is playing a Republican president, but I think there must be some commentary there. I mean, if it's not, it's a huge missed opportunity. Nixon's White House administration, after he, of course, was forced to resign, they kind of went underground, only to later rise secretly, sort of like the Skrulls in George W. Bush's administration, and really manipulate him. So that's fascinating. If you've never seen Vice from Adam McKay, watch that movie. And while Reagan, what he did, when you look beneath the surface, he actually laid the groundwork for MAGA, which is a much more extreme version, actually, of Reaganism. So that's all quite fascinating. So I wonder what the show is trying to say here, again, by pairing them together and putting them up on the wall, and if that's trying to indicate what kind of president Mulroney is playing. We'll find out. And again, if that doesn't mean something, that's sloppy and a missed opportunity. All right, then there's Olivia Colman. For those of you who don't get her Paul Robeson joke, I didn't. I looked him up, and I thought it was very interesting. And I wish, again, they'd had time to dive into this a little bit more. So Paul Robeson was a pro football at least I guess it made us look him up. So Paul Robeson was a pro football player turned entertainer turned communist. And, obviously, the black experience in the United States has been tragic and very difficult. And so today you see a lot of people in the black community turning to the Muslim religion and culture. But before that, Paul Robeson turned to communism. And I think that parallel is interesting. So he was drawn to communism, and he actually he not only visited Russia multiple times, but he interacted with their government, and their government was supportive of him. But he, as a result, like many in Hollywood, found his career destroyed by the McCarthy era, which was rooting out communism. And Robeson went even further. He also lost one of his most basic freedoms, the ability to leave the country, because they revoked his passport. So not only could he not go back to Russia, but he couldn't even go on tour as an entertainer and support himself. And his career and his fortune was just absolutely destroyed. So very interesting story, particularly when you think about how it evolved from going from communism to, I think, a much, we don't want to get political, but I feel a much healthier, positive route with the Muslim community. All right, so anyway, I do believe that Fury intentionally let himself get grabbed by Coleman, for sure. But I can't believe she didn't spot him placing that camera. I mean, maybe she did, but she's giving him information. Maybe, you never know in the spy game. Maybe it's all intentional. But I'm like, how do you miss that? Nice holotech, though. I like that. Although Coleman's dialogue came across like she was setting up a video game mission, right? One of those celebrities put in a video game. I thought that was funny. So let's talk about the big ending of episode 1. Earlier, Fury warns Talos that Gravik knows mercy is your weakness. Time to prove him wrong. But in the end, it was Fury's mercy that Gravik exploits. And I thought that was good. I liked that. I thought that was good. Perhaps maybe a little too subtle, but I liked it. I thought that was clever. And Gaia, she did the same thing to Talos. She exploited his mercy, saying she marked the bombs at the drop, yet they turned out to be empty bags that were being used as decoys to throw them off, in fact. She was still totally on Team Gravik. Although Talos, I thought, was playing the mom card a little bit too hard. I was like, let up on the spy game for just a minute here, Talos. This is your daughter. Was Gravik following Fury this whole time? Was that him on that night earlier, right before Coleman's people grabbed him? And by the way, how can Gravik shrink himself down to shapeshift into a child? I think there are basic rules of mass and stuff like that. And so that stuff also, again, bothers me. I'm like, Skrull children can shapeshift into other children or small adults. And I don't think that an adult Skrull could, shapeshift into a child. But they did it. I also would have preferred Gravik shapeshifting into people they both had known, right? Instead of random strangers, like obviously extras, not even like professional actors. But couldn't it have been like, this is your life, Nick Fury, or this is everyone you liked more than me? That would have been much better. But again, they can't afford it. And I think it also would have meant more to us, right? How does he know some of those people aren't just looking at him funny? And you'll also note that the Skrull impersonating the American extremist was in this crowd, obviously to pin the attack on that group, as the Skrulls are trying to start a war between two superpowers. They've caused a lot of unrest globally, but now they're going for the big guns, the United States and Russia. We know why Gravik, Gaia, and Talos don't flinch when the dirty bomb goes off, but what about Fury and Hill? They're not immune to radiation. I was surprised that they were treating it like it was just a dust cloud. Although I guess Maria Hill doesn't have to worry about it now. All right, so what did you think of the first episode of Secret Invasion? Share your thoughts and theories and hopes and disappointments, if you have any, down below. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.